Our next guest is a presentation of the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, which opens today, Friday, May 10th. 25 degrees in Whistler this weekend.
Man.
Blake, what a spectacular day for the Whistler Golf Club to open. And if you've got a group of 12 or more, Whistler Golf Club reminding you, the organizer, it is time to reach out, lock in that tee time for 2024. The prime times are filling up fast. And just for reaching out, you, the organizer, plays for free. Tell us about your group. Go to whistlergolf.com/groups.
You been up there in the summer yet, Frank?
I haven't. I've only been there in the winter, and it's, man, what a place.
Yeah.
Just the drive alone, sea to sky, is worth it.
Oh, the drive in the summer, blue sky.
Yeah.
I've been here 3 weeks now, and I don't think I've seen a cloud.
That's right. That's right. You're the good luck then.
I would say Whistler in the summer is the unkept secret, but then you go to try and book a hotel room, and it's clearly not so much of a secret. Anyways, got to get you up there, Frank. Frank Seravalli, in case you didn't know, is joining us in the Nation Network studio. Of course, NHL Insider, host of the Frankly Speaking Daily Faceoff podcast, who has been covering the Canucks through, well, into a second round here. First and foremost, what were your thoughts on Game 1?
What a weird game it was. What an awesome game it was at that. If you could take and bottle up for me the energy in Rogers Arena in the last 2 minutes, like never mind the celebration for the goals, but that drama, that intensity that you could cut with a knife, I would just like to take that and bottle it up with me. And yeah, when I die, I want you to put that in my casket.
I love the shock. I love the shock too of when a team is playing well, but then they get shocked by a goal against, and the audience doesn't know what to do with it, right? Like we feel so good. How are we down? And we saw that, and then it manufactures into a rally as well. There was high drama in every way, shape, and form on that night.
Every part of it, from puck drop on. I mean, who takes a too many men penalty 40 seconds into a game?
Who even does that?
After you talk for 10 days or however long it was between series about the idea of staying disciplined, they could have been whistled 3 times on that first shift alone. And then the amazing part is they go the remaining, 59 plus minutes or whatever without a penalty. And I'm sitting here going, okay, the special teams gulf between these two teams, we know it's large, but are the Canucks really going to be able to cut their penalties from the regular season down by 75% every game in the series? They average 3.8 penalties per game. That's
a key question here for Game 2.
Yeah, it sure is. And Frank, I know you were amongst the many who were saying those first games of the Nashville-Vancouver series weren't exactly gentle on the eyes. They played a couple of good games here in a row. Game 6 was aesthetically pleasing. Game 1 aesthetically pleasing. So let's hope for more in Game 2. You had the big Thatcher Demko update earlier this week. You've been first on the Thatcher Demko file throughout, Frank. What can you tell us? Anything further from what you reported earlier this week?
We're reaching a critical juncture heading into this weekend. It's going to be big for Thatcher Demko. To my knowledge, he hasn't begun taking shots yet. They're not letting him drop to his knee. And they're hoping that could possibly happen in the next few days, Monday-ish, Sunday, Monday. And then once that happens and you see the reaction of how he feels, that's going to be the biggest indicator as to whether or not he's going to be able to come back in this series. It's not guaranteed that he's going to be able to do that. But they're working on a timeline that you win Game 1 in the fashion that you did. You steal that one from the jaws of defeat, down 4-1. You've now bought yourself a couple extra days, an opportunity for Demko to come back. So once he can ramp up and begin taking shots, the big question is how long from taking shots to playing in a game. It's all going to depend on how his body reacts and feels. But Monday is sort of a week from when we got a schedule. Game 5, I still think is really unlikely. I think Game 6 and 7, you begin to get way more.
Which is close to a month.
That's the timeline you laid out earlier in the week. No way for the first 4 games. Outside shot of Game 5, but more realistically, Game 6 or Game 7, if things go well through these tests. Gotcha.
Well, if things really go well, you've bought yourself another week.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough. The other thing that Blake and I were kicking around this week is what would be the circumstances where you drop him in a Game 6 or a Game 7 That could be a really
There's
tough
not
call.
a circumstance for me. Like, honestly, this is one of the 3 to 5 best goalies in the world. If he says he's good to go, I'm putting him in. I don't care.
You don't care how well Silovs is playing?
No, and I think that was kind of really one of the under sort of reported things that hasn't been talked about from game 1. Everyone was all over Skinner, and rightfully so for the goals that he gave up. But I have to tell you, that's the least confident that I've felt watching Silovs these playoffs, not really going out on a limb saying that, but it was a whole, not just the goals, it was a body language thing. Like, he was all over the place in the crease, and he looked like he was actually nervous for the first time.
For sure. And there's a little more DeSmith, like we've been a little bit critical of DeSmith's rebound control, and there was some rebound issues there for Silovs. So it looks like a coin toss if you're the coaching staff right now for the Vancouver Canucks. We were just talking about momentum, that, you know, if you were down 2-1 in a series and Silovs got you back to 3-2, or DeSmith for that matter, would you really put Demko into a game 6? You would. Okay.
Yeah, I want the best chance to win.
Yeah.
And I think the gap between Silovs and Demko, or DeSmith and Demko, is like, you know, if we're talking 1 to 64 ranking the goalies in the NHL, you know, Silovs and DeSmith are in the 40s or 50s.
And we tend to let skaters play at 80%. They generally don't let goalies play at 80%, right? Unless it's something like that is.
But is Demko, this is the calculation that Ian Clark and the Canucks would have to make. Rick Tocchet, is Demko at 80 or 85% better than no one's 100% right now. Yeah. I don't think Silovs or DeSmith is. There's probably some wear and tear just on, rhythm and repetition and, every other night getting to game 6. It's such an odd dynamic. And I've said this before when it comes to just look at the Boston Bruins. Never in a million years would you say to a goalie in the regular season, go play 25 games in a row and win us a Stanley Cup. But in the regular season, it's like, well, we can't let this guy work 2 weeks in a row. He needs a day off. Why is it that we suddenly get to the most critical time of the year, high stress, intensity, pressure, and then all of a sudden say, hey, buddy, we're going to strap the team to your back and good luck. You're not getting a break.
It's a fantastic point, Frank. It is one that we have seen here in recent Stanley Cup playoff runs. We talked about it with Coach Mark Crawford on the program yesterday, and it's something else we've kicked around this week. Silovs is not accustomed to playing this many games in a row. Perhaps we saw some fatigue set in game 1. I
don't buy that.
Okay. Do you think
not after 5 days off or whatever it was? How many days were between game 6 and 1?
Fair enough. But do you suspect the Canucks would consider a load management start for Casey DeSmith in this series?
No, I think it would come down to play. And in fact, I got to tell you, I was mildly surprised that DeSmith did not come in to play the third period right from Jump Street. I was thinking, if you're Rick Tocchet, and I know maybe that getting that goal late in the period helped them, and we can talk about that in a second, but coming out for the third, I'm thinking, not only do you want to give your team a jolt down 4-2, but also, you're looking at trying to get game 2 and beyond DeSmith to knock the rust off after he hadn't played in a while. I would have wanted him to see him in the third period. Obviously, it worked out quite well. Just Silovs shut the door, but still, I think a valid question to ask. And had the Canucks not won the game, I would have asked Rick Tocchet after.
I wonder if the Lindholm goal changed that equation a little bit. If they don't score the Lindholm goal and it's 4-1 going into the third, maybe they do make that change.
That actually, I asked Tocchet after the game, when do you think the tide began to turn? And he said that goal. Mm-hmm. But I think if you actually back it up, really the true turning point for me was when Draisaitl went out. I think the Oilers were a mess after that.
Well, that's my next question. The other big injury in this series, Leon Draisaitl. Coach Knobloch tells us cramping in equipment. He did not practice on Friday. What do you know about the Draisaitl injury, and what's the forecast there?
So I would say that there's certainly some trepidation there. I think what happened was the Oilers thought it was nothing on Wednesday night after game 1. And I think they were surprised to wake up on Thursday and find out
it's still there.
Not that it's still there, that it was worse than they thought. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously left him day to day. I think my even without the morning skate, my thought process is I'd be surprised if we don't see Draisaitl play in game 2. This is a guy that the last time we had an all-Canadian second round matchup, 2022 Battle of Alberta, he played on one leg. So I have a hard time seeing him be pulled out of the lineup. There's a reason why they make Toradol and needles and whatever else you shoot yourself up with at this time of year. Leon Draisaitl, for my money, was the best player on the ice through the first 30 minutes of game 1. Maybe they change up the lineup a little bit. Maybe they put Draisaitl and McDavid back together to maybe take some of the heat off of Draisaitl. But I still suspect him to play.
It's clearly an upper body injury, though. It's
a lower back injury.
Yeah.
He said you could see him mouth it on the bench as he's talking to the trainer.
And so he becomes a huge target because you don't have to do anything untoward to test him. Anytime he's going to be near the glass, I would assume one of those big defensemen of the Vancouver Canucks is going to make sure he feels it.
The Nikita Zadorov cross-check to the back?
Yeah, something to that effect.
Although you could trademark it.
Yeah.
Well,
although I'd imagine that if I were Ken Holland or Chris Knobloch today having a meeting with series supervisor Brad Watson like they do every morning of a game, I would be saying, hey, it's obvious that our guy's dealing with something here. Please keep an eye on cross checks to the back.
Although, speaking as someone who's had back injuries, like there's no sheltering a back injury. The muscles are too big. Like the back's involved in just about every movement out there. So I'm not sure it's anything.
But a vicious cross check to the back that you don't need is like.
I'm just saying his discomfort and his ability to perform with a back injury is more compromised than it would be.
Hey, a shoulder to shoulder hit against the glass is going to hurt.
Anything
is going to hurt. With
just skating injury. Could do it.
Skating is going to hurt with a back injury. Adam Henrique, he did practice on Thursday. He missed game 1. What's your understanding of his status going forward?
Getting closer. The fact that he practiced and then sat on the bench for a while, to me, indicated that either this was a non-serious attempt to play or that he still needs more time. So I don't know. If I'm the Canucks, I understand you asking the question. To me, Henrique hasn't been a big enough of an impact player to really, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
He's just one of those guys on the roster that like a Garland, like a
it's also the depth at center ice.
That's
right?
really, especially when you're dealing with a Draisaitl injury, I think the question becomes a little bit more interesting. But
he's got experience in the Cup playoffs, though. Like he's a useful depth player. You never know when those guys become the storyline in any given series. That would be the only thing.
Well, that's why I was going to say I think it's so fascinating to see what the Canucks depth production looks like moving forward.
Yeah.
Mr. Game 1, Dakota Joshua, it's great that he scores then, but it also shows how important it is when he does score. He was on a milk cart in the last 5 games of that series against the Preds.
Yep. And Garland was struggling to find his first goal. I mean, we see effort from Pettersson someday, some game, right? Pettersson will score, Frank?
Effort? Is that what we're going with now?
No, I'm just saying.
Hey,
tell me.
He played a lot in the third period. They loved his defensive game.
That's great. I mean, they love Sam Gagne's defensive game when he plays too, but one makes $800K and one makes $11.5 million next year.
Not yet. Yeah. Next year he's on the big.
I still didn't like the body language. Like he had that one great look where he got a 1T, and I think he even like sort of leveraged his body almost down on one knee, and he misses the net, and not by much, but he hangs his head, and that's a player that to me is beating himself before he even gets on the ice.
Do you think Stuart Skinner is shook here? Would you be concerned if you're on the Edmonton side of the ledger with the goaltender?
No, and in fact, I would feel emboldened watching Silovs at the other end.
Just that the other guy's struggling too. If you're Stuart Skinner,
yeah. Were there goals that Stuart Skinner allowed that were unacceptable? 100%. JT Miller acknowledged publicly that he's practiced that 1,000,000 times and really kind of has never scored.
And the Garland goal,
the Garland goal was just a lack of patience. But I didn't watch that game from Skinner and say, man, he looked really uncomfortable. I think he just made some tactical errors. I watched Silovs and I was like, that guy looks uncomfortable. Maybe he settles in. But when you're swimming out of your crease and you're sliding in the wrong direction of shots, that is not good.
And not tracking guys behind the net, which is pretty rudimentary stuff too. So.
Look, everyone suspects that Connor McDavid will be hurt in this series, but Coach Mark Crawford was telling us yesterday he really likes the big, sizable Canucks defensemen, the space they're able to eat up, and the way that they can match up with him with those defensemen, but the forward combinations as well. What did you make of the matchup within the game with McDavid in game one, and what do you foresee there going forward?
The Canucks did a fantastic job. I mean, there's no denying that. I think when you look at sort of the Rick Tocchet mentioned the gap control that they had. It wasn't just the defenseman. I think it was also, it's a two-part issue when it comes to the gap. It's how you manage it from the defense side, but the back pressure that's coming at you the other way from the forwards. And I think they did a really nice job. That said, what I'm struggling to balance was how much was that the Canucks and how much was that just McDavid not really having a great night. And of course the back and forth will be interesting to see, but there were, like, even when he had a little time and space, like there were a couple times that he just like fumbled the puck and it was uncharacteristic that I think you'd expect him to be a lot sharper. I mean, that's the first time in his play. This is a guy that has averaged 1.62 points per game in his playoff career. It's the first time he ever didn't have a shot on goal in a playoff game.
Crazy.
Ever.
Yeah. These are the decisions that Chris Knoblauch has as to whether or not, do you just go full nuclear and put Draisaitl and him together? And these are the decisions that a guy that doesn't have this experience in the NHL playoffs. It's going to be interesting to watch. I mean, this is probably the best iteration of the Edmonton Oilers that we have seen.
Yep.
But they've got a pretty green coach that's guiding them through. Are you intrigued by the coaching matchup here? Not that Tocchett's got scads of experience, but he's been on a lot of assistant benches and he has been a head coach in the NHL before. And of course, he's got all the playing experience as well.
2 playing Stanley Cups, 2 assistant coach Stanley Cups. I mean, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
By the way, I love the emotion from him.
I was just going to ask you about the emotion. How, like,
and I know that he was disappointed, and he's generally pretty stoic. But why can't you have fun?
So, Frank, help me out with this.
But to answer your part about Knoblauch, like, no, do I think that's going to be a game changer? That guy is the least rattled coach that I've ever seen. I don't know that we've seen a facial muscle or expression change from him the entire season. I don't even think he said hi to the officials, let alone barked about a call.
Knoblauch, you're talking?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
I thought he looked like somebody stolen his lunch all game long in game one.
No, like the same face he makes then is the same face he makes in the press conference.
The pained expression? Like he looks like so worried all the time.
No, he's just a guy that just doesn't, there's no emotion ever. I talked to him the week I drove to New Jersey the week he got hired, and I did a podcast with him, and I'm not going to, say it wasn't good, but it was like talking to someone.
He's pretty locked down.
Not just guarded, but it was like watching paint dry. That's not who he is. He's not a gregarious.
Yeah.
He's not going to be making, he's not going to be angry. He's not going to be whatever. I just think he's totally just, This is how it is.
3-question analysis on the facial expressions of the opposing coach. That's why you listen and watch to see.
I think Tocchett's the stoic one. Tocchet to me feels like that. That's why the high fives were so crazy.
Tocchet was anything but stoic as a player.
Yeah.
Like, that's why when I heard him say, "Oh, I didn't like that," that's only game one, I was like, Rick, that's exactly who you were as a player. I don't know, Frank. These guys, they get the big whistle and the NHL head coaching jobs, and it's like a license to remove their personality sometimes.
It's not that. I actually think there's something to that, because I watch the Sheldon Keefe departure in Toronto, and not to harp on it or throw some more dirt on top of the casket, but I think he was an exact lesson in what your team takes from your comportment as a coach. Mm-hmm. He was always all game long barking at the officials. He looked like a ball of stress. His face was so red at times that it looked like it was turning purple. Mm-hmm. And I know that I can't make any jokes about how anyone's aged, but from when he took over to when he left, it looked like, president of the United States. So maybe that's what happens when you are the leader of the Toronto Maple Leafs, I guess. But
he got 10 years younger Lakeside.
Leader of the free hockey world.
Yeah, I was gonna make the joke, but that's just self-proclaimed.
Yeah. Frank Seravalli, everybody. He's younger than you think.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.